Welcome. In this video we will be finding the first derivative of both of these functions, which I've numbered 1 and 2, and then comparing the differences between these derivatives. So let's begin with 1. Before we begin with 1, let's recall that the chain rule helps us find the derivative for functions that are of this form. That is, they're a composition of functions. For number 1, f of x, the outer function is sine x, and g of x is x cubed. So using the chain rule, we'd have the derivative of this function is the derivative of the outer function, leaving the inner function intact, multiplied by the derivative of the inner function. The derivative of sine is equal to cosine, and the derivative of x cubed is just 3x squared. So now I'm going to replace g prime with 3x squared. I'm going to replace f prime with cosine, and I'm going to replace g of x here with x cubed. So as you can see here, this is all color-coded. So I have the derivative of the outer function, that is the derivative of sine, is cosine. And I leave the inner function just alone, it's intact. So here is just g of x, the inner function, which is x cubed. Then we multiply this entire quantity here by the derivative of the inner function. In this case, that's 3x squared, and that's here. Y prime is equal to 3x squared cosine of x cubed. Alright, let's do the same thing for the second function, that is y equals sine x cubed. Now for this second function, the outer function is actually x cubed. The inner function is sine x in this case. So the derivative of the outer function is 3x squared, and the derivative of the inner function is cosine x. So let's again make some replacements here. So this is 3 times, and instead of writing an x here, I'm going to put in g of x, and g of x is sine x. And then of course this is squared. Then I'm going to multiply this quantity here by g prime, that is the derivative of the inner function. And then for clarity's sake, I can rewrite this again without using so much color. So y prime is equal to 3 times sine x squared cosine x, which is 3 times sine squared x cosine x. Alright, now let's look at the differences and similarities here. Okay, so as you can see here, the first function and the second function are each on their own side of the screen. These are both written as a composition of functions. The outer function and the inner function are swapped, however. For this first one, the outer function was sine x and the inner function was x cubed, whereas for the second one, the outer function was x cubed and the inner function was sine x. And that absolutely affected their derivatives, since of course we start by taking the derivative of the outer function. In this case, sine x has a derivative of cosine. We leave the inner function intact, and then we multiply on the outside by the derivative of the inner function, which in this case, the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared. Whereas for the second one, our outer function is x cubed, so we started by taking the derivative of x cubed, which is 3x squared. We left the inner portion intact by writing in a sine x, and then we multiplied by the derivative of the inner function, which is cosine x, and then just rewrote sine x squared as sine squared x. I hope this video has been helpful.